Here is Sean Durzi. Rookie defenseman, Adrian Kempe over the line. Kopitar to Durzi. Oh, he wins it! Oh, what a setup for the game winner!
All right, welcome into another episode of Hockey Row. Today we got a very esteemed guest, Corey Pronman from The Athletic, talking all things NHL draft. How you doing, Corey?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. I've been reading all your stuff coming out, pumping content daily. Are you still in Buffalo?
No, I'm back home now, but it was a good couple days there in Buffalo. The first NHL-wide event we've had now in several years, where you kind of had some glimpses of that in various tournaments where a lot of people showed up. But this was the first time the whole league was actually together, so it was a pretty cool thing to see, and hope we'll see it again in a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm sure it was nice to get back with your fellow colleagues, fellow scouts, and executives, and kind of talk some shop and be a part of some normalcy again when it comes to that kind of thing. But let's get started here. Your first mock draft came out a little bit ago, and you mocked Jiri Kulich to the LA Kings. Can you give listeners a kind of view into his game, and why do you think he'd be a good fit for the prospect pool that the Kings are building?
Yeah, Kulich is a guy who was on the rise following his U18 World Championships around the league. Not like a huge guy, but I think he's around 6'0". He skates quite well. He's very skilled. He can make plays. Scored a lot of goals in that tournament, and scoring goals in ways that look really attractive in terms of being able to pick corners, and looks like it has an NHL type of shot. I think he's a competitive player too. I don't know if he's going to be like a penalty killer in the NHL, but I think he can win battles, and he gives a good effort, and just has a lot of dimensions that will, I think, translate to being a good pro. He was a good pro this season in Czechia, and I just think this is a guy who will probably go somewhere in the teens, and that's where they're picking right now.
Yeah, he looks like an interesting, the Kings have a lot of centers. Obviously, centers can go to wing, but to have a pure winger and a skillful player, he seems to be a guy that could maybe, you say, like middle six to top six?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable potential. Yeah, he might be a center. He might be a wing. He's played both. And just because what you mentioned in terms of the Kings, I mean, they have so much young depth at every position. It's hard to say they need a center, they need a defenseman, even though you always want more of both of those things. But they have a lot of depth at every position right now.
Going into two of the most, maybe least predictive players in this draft, for the Russian predicament, both Daniela and Ivan are both risk for their own different reasons. If you were Rob Blake, would you take a chance on one of these guys if they fell to 19, being that our prospect pool is so deep? You're
talking about Danila Yurov and Ivan Mirosnichenko, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a debate that a lot of teams are having, not just the Kings, but a lot of teams picking in the teens and the 20s are having debates. It's not just a GM thing; it's something they got to bring to their ownership, and I think those discussions, from my understanding, are still happening across the league. But I think it's absolutely a conversation you have to have, given I think most teams I talk to think that both of those Russian wingers are top 10 players on pure talent. And it kind of reminds me of the 2010 draft, where you saw Vladimir Tarasenko go around 16 to St. Louis. It was a trade up from the pick with Ottawa. And then you have Evgeny Kuznetsov go in the 20s. And both of them were highly esteemed prospects going into that draft. I think there are teams looking at this situation, and obviously Mirosnichenko is much more unique. I mean, you obviously feel for the player. He has diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, still going through his battle with cancer right now. So a bunch of variables teams have to consider with Mirosnichenko, but especially with Yurov, it presents a unique opportunity. But it's can you tolerate the risk factors? Can you tolerate whether there will be issues getting him a visa? Can you tolerate potentially him signing an extension in the KHL? Those are all variables that teams have to consider in the lead up. But I think if you're picking at 19, like the Kings are, I think those guys are absolutely in the conversation, and you need to have those conversations with management and ownership.
Yeah, to plug your recent article, you wrote an article about the highest potential, and Ivan was number 5 on that list. What do you really see in his game before he was diagnosed with cancer?
I mean, he's an awesome player. There's just so much in his game that looks like an NHL player. He's 6'1". He can skate well. He's got great skill. It's not just the flashy skill. This guy plays hard. He wins battles. He can get to the net. There's a little physicality. He can hit guys, and he's got a real legitimate shot threat. He can score from the dots. consistently, played well versus men up until he started kind of slowed down, probably because of the symptoms he was suffering from the cancer. And just I think last season at the U18s, he was one of the best forwards there. Was one of the best players at the Klinka Gretzky this summer. I just think there's just so much in his game that looks like a pro, a guy to be a top of the lineup winger. It's obviously just so unfortunate what happened to him, and we're all hoping for the best for him.
Yeah, definitely. You had your second mock draft 2.0 come out, and you had the Kings picking Rucker McGroarty here from the national team development program. Kings are not shy on taking those players. Alex Turcotte, 5th overall, and then a U.S.-born player in Brock Faber in the second round. What do you see in his game, and why did he move up maybe in your mock draft to where the Kings are picking at 19?
Right. If he probably reminds me less of those two, it probably reminds me more of Kaliev, to be quite honest, just because he's got the skill and the goal scoring, but lacks the skating, kind of like Artie was. Although I think, unlike Artie, I think this guy's compete level is really high, and that's why I think, despite the skating issues, he's going to go in the first round, just because I think teams are so impressed by the work rate to go at the offense. And I think this is a guy who just continued to impress all season. His U18 World Championships, I thought he was some of his best hockey all season. So ended the season on a high note. He was the captain of that very talented NTDP team, and he showed it by how he plays on the ice. Like I said, the skating with him gets kind of wonky. So that's the one thing teams around the league are looking at and wondering. But I think. I think right around that spot in the draft, right around the 20 spot, which is where they're picking. I think that's where this conversations get really serious with this player, and I think he's a guy that would make a lot of sense for them.
Yeah, it might get Kings fans excited to know that you compared him to Tyler Toffoli. How do those comparisons view for you guys?
Right, because Toffoli was a guy who was really skilled, goal scorer, competes well, but he fell to the second round in his draft year due to the skating concerns. And it's possible that McGroarty gets a little bit lower than where I have him projected right now, just because of the feet. But that's just a guy who came to mind, and I think that, and obviously people are not doubting that Toffoli should have been a first rounder, if not a high first rounder, if you redid that draft.
Yeah. I think, seeing the power play concerns, and obviously you don't draft for need at the NHL level, but, an elite scorer or the elite shot, you can never have too many of those in the pipeline in hopes that one hits at the big league level.
Right. And he would probably be more like kind of a net front bumper type guy on an NHL power play, whereas a guy like, like Artie or Quinton are probably, more on the flanks.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back to your article that you wrote today about the highest potential players. There was a couple that I saw that you had, ranked more in the 30s, but the potential was really high. One was Yanni Nyman, left winger out of Mestis, and you had him close to the top 10 as far as potential that you've been hearing from sources and executives, but you have him ranked outside the first round. What is the high polarizing nature of this prospect?
Yeah, just I think first, the things you like about him, he's a big winger. He's really skilled. He can score goals. He can make plays. He played on kind of he was in Mestis, but he wasn't on a great Mestis team. And I think it was one of the lower seeded teams in that league, but he still scored a lot. I don't know. I forget off the top of my head. It might have been close to a point per game, but still quite impressive versus men, albeit it wasn't in Liga. But the reason why I don't have him as a first rounder is I thought his performance was quite inconsistent this season. Some games you really liked him, some games he wasn't as noticeable. His skating's just okay. The compete's average, but there's a lot of tools there, and he's really young too. I think he's like a July 2004 birth date, so only about 2 months away from being eligible for next year's draft class. So you're hopeful there's going to be some projection there. You hope that after he puts in a good summer, shows up to Liga next season, and looks like a real player. So yeah, I wouldn't go to bat for him in the first round. If I had a high second, that still might be a little high for me. But I think once you get to the mid second, I think there's not going to be a whole lot of players left with that kind of potential.
Yeah, I was looking at it, and the Kings went with a quality over quantity last season, trading up multiple times, and it kind of piqued my interest as a player for the Kings to maybe move up in the second round and take a chance on.
Yeah, I think that guy makes a lot of sense in that regard. I think I had a couple other centers there, Philip Bystedt, Danny Zhilkin, who I had marked as second rounders on my list, but Bystedt might actually go in the first round from what I've heard. But I think both of those guys make sense as well in the same vein as Neiman.
Coming down to the players that always fall. I mean, you look at Jasper Wallstedt fell last season, and it happens every year. Who's some guy that you're high on in the first round, maybe in the top 12 or, top 14 there that might fall down to the Kings that it should be a no-brainer pick for them if that gets to that point?
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about the Russians, and there are unique variables, geopolitical variables, sorry, and in terms of Miroshnichenko health variables. In terms of just pure talent, I think I'm not guaranteeing these things will happen. You're asking just my opinion on things I'm hearing from around the league. Brad Lambert is one who I think, I'm not sure I don't know if he's going to get to 19, but I think there's some hesitancy around the league with this player that I think there's a possibility he can start to fall just because he didn't, even though he's a fantastic skater and has offense, he just didn't really have a good season. And I think there were just some concerns around the league in terms of how his season went. And I really think both with the Winnipeg Ice kids, I think the love kind of fell off with them as the season went on, those being the center Connor Geekie and winger Matthew Savoy. I guess he's a center winger, but people really think he's a winger in the NHL. Again, I'm not saying either of them will get to 19. I probably wouldn't say that right now, to be quite honest, but I think there's enough of some concerns on both of them, at least being top 10 guys right now around the league, that I think those are potential guys you can start seeing going lower than where we thought they would have gone 3-6 months ago.
Is it a case for you with Brad Lambert, being that he had such a good World Championships last year and again this season, that it might be a little bit of over scouting, or is it a lot of the movement of him playing for multiple teams that maybe put some doubt in the scouts' eyes?
He just didn't have a good. He had 3 good games this season. Those were the World Junior games. He just didn't play well this season. It was just a matter of you watched him in the skating, looks really flashy, and he's circling guys, but he just didn't. I watched plenty of those JYP games because him and Joakim Kamel were on the same team playing in that first half, and he just wasn't making much of an impact. It was just that's just the fact. And you had high expectations what you saw at the World Juniors 2 seasons ago, what you had seen when he was playing against men the previous season. He scored at a significant level for a guy who was a year removed from his draft and always played ahead of his age group with U18s, U20s. I think you could have expected him to maybe hit a little bit of a wall versus men just because of the way he plays, where, I think there needed to be a little more of an interior game with him, but it's just fair to say, and by any reasonable expectation, that he just did not have the season that I think a lot of people expected out of him. And compared to, let's say, Joakim Kamel in the same league, it wasn't close, especially given they played on the same team. So that's just where I think the downward momentum is coming from.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on today. We got one more question for you, and I know that the second round gems can obviously make a team. You have Arthur Kaliev, we have Brock Faber, that are highly touted prospects within the Kings organization. Right. Where do you feel like there could be some players that you have ranked maybe as first round grades that could fall into the second round, or just some gems in general that Kings fans should be looking at?
I think usually the smaller wingers tend to be guys who are candidates to fall just based on history. Teams tend to prioritize centers and defensemen. So a couple of wingers that I think could potentially get into the second round that I really like are the Moose Jaw winger Jagger Firkus and the Slovakian winger Filip Mešar. Both are guys. Mešar has great speed and goal scoring ability. Firkus also is a guy who can shoot the puck really well, has fantastic skill and hockey sense, and was a big part of that Moose Jaw team's success this season. And I think those are 2 guys that, if they were there early day 2, would be guys I'd be passionate about.
Nice. Well, thank you, Corey. Appreciate you coming on today and taking some time out of your day. I know you're a busy guy, multiple articles coming out all the time, and 200 plus comments in each one of your articles that you got to respond to on The Athletic. Do you have any new art?
I try not to respond to those, to be quite honest.
Do you have any new articles coming out that you want to plug that people should be looking out for on The Athletic?
Oh, yes, that's a great idea. There's a lot coming. So like I said, we had a mock draft yesterday that was from just my own personal mock draft, and we had the upside list. We're going to have a best tools list coming out next week, basically best skaters, hands, hockey sense, etc. And we have plenty of other types of rankings, mock drafts coming over the next few weeks.
Well, take a look out for that. He is on The Athletic. It's very inexpensive to go get some premium content for all your sports needs. As you see scrolling across the bottom, his Twitter handle at Corey Pronman on Twitter. Follow him for any articles that are coming out. And appreciate you coming on, Corey.
Yep, sure. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, all right. Thank you again for Corey Pronman to come on Hockey Royalty. As always, you can find all of our stuff at hockeyroyalty.com. Please add us at hockey_royalty. And now a message from our premium sponsors at DraftKings. Hockey fans, the pursuit of the Stanley Cup is on, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, has an unbelievable offer for the most exciting playoffs in sports. New customers can bet $5 on any team to win and get $150 in free bets, no matter what, win or lose. Looking to turn a small bet into a big payday during the playoffs? Well, DraftKings has same-game parlays. You can do just that. Create your own parlay by combining multiple bets, like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, and more. It's your shot at even a bigger payout. DraftKings is safe and secure and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN. Bet $5 on any NHL team to win and get $100 in free bets no matter what. That's draft code THPN and DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Again, thank you, Corey Pronman, for coming on. Have a nice day, Kings fans.